think we're about good to go.
We're good to go.
Okay. So many will remember that Richard was here. I'm not sure if it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago or so, that you were here and did a Friday and Saturday training time here at the church. We had a really good response, and this was a last minute. So there was an opening, and I got an email from the lady who does booking, Sue, and said, would you be willing? We're looking for some place that is familiar with him. And I said, absolutely. So it's been all of a week and a half since we knew that you were coming. And but excited to have you here with us this morning as well.
Glad to be here.
And I'll be back up after, but I'd like to pray for you, and then I'll let you take over. So
all right.
Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we just ask that you would bless Richard and the ministry that he's involved in for their work that they do in helping us to understand your creation, your world better, and how it fits with the Bible that you have given us. So as he speaks to us this morning, may you bless him and encourage him and strengthen him and speak through him. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks, Pastor. Yes, I'm glad to be back again. So it's... I have fond memories of it was about 2 years ago, I think, that I was here. But for those of you who don't know, who don't remember me from 2 years ago, or Creation Ministries, we are a Christian organization, obviously. And I head up the Canadian office. That's my main role. I also get to go out and speak, and I produce our teaching videos as well. So we've got fun things happening there at the ministry. Our goal, for us as a ministry, we're an information ministry. That's what we do. We want to get faith-building information out into the church. There are many great ministries around the world that are worthy of our support as believers, and our prayer and financial support and other ways, volunteer support. Where we fit in is, we're an information ministry, and we focus on that part of Scripture. It's the first 11 chapters, Genesis 1 to 11. That's our focus as a ministry. That's an area where many Christians have questions. It's about creation, the fall into sin, then the flood of Noah, then the Tower of Babel, and then in Genesis 12 you get to Abraham, and things get pretty normal after that. So then people are okay with that. But it's Genesis 1 to 11 where we read those chapters as Christians, and we hear something out in the world through the media and textbooks at school if you're a student, or if you remember being a student long ago. They don't fit with what the Bible is saying. Those things don't fit with what the Bible is saying, and it causes Christians to doubt. It causes questions that can affect your walk with Christ, your faith, your trust in God's Word as infallible, and so on. And in order to answer some of those questions, as far as we know, of all the Christian ministries globally, we employ the most PhD scientists. That makes us a little bit different than your average Christian ministry. But I'm not a scientist, in case you're wondering. My background's electronics, but I work with these guys, and we have a great time globally getting some of this information out. I love speaking. I get to go, here's what I do. I get to go to church after church after church all across Canada and tell Christians that they can believe the Bible. I love doing that, because we all want to know that what we've placed our faith in is actually true. Not that we're following, as Peter said, cleverly devised fables, but that, no, what we believe as Christians is actually true. And again, one of those areas where Christians struggle is Genesis 1 to 11. But even that portion of Scripture is true, and that's why we have the scientists on staff to, in a sense, do the research and do the heavy lifting to answer the questions that we have when we read through Genesis. And then I have the privilege of taking their information and communicating it to you folks. And that's I was born in Kitchener, Ontario, lived there all my life. That's my family there. It's a fairly recent picture. I've got 4 girls, and the most recent addition there that my wife Karen is holding is Josiah. It's my little boy. He turned 1 on Thursday, just a few days ago here. So he's the most recent addition, and we're having a good time there in Kitchener. We bought an RV last summer, and I'm going to be taking my family with me on some tours. The first kind of test tour is coming up in May here at the end of next month. We'll be in Northern Ontario above Lake Superior and traveling around. And so I won't be alone on these speaking tours. I'll take my family with me, so that'll be kind of fun. As a ministry, obviously we have speaking events to get this information out. We got a website to get this information out as well. Obviously, you might have guessed that. If you have questions, there's a search window in the upper right-hand corner there. If you have questions like, how did dinosaurs fit with the Bible? Where does an ice age fit? Where did the flood? Where did the water come from for a flood? And where did it go afterwards? And questions about radioisotope dating and cavemen and all those kinds of things. Where did Cain get his wife if he wasn't able? And many other questions that you might have, you can go to this website and get the answer. Now, the website name, I apologize, is really long and hard to remember, so I thought maybe we could all say this together. It's creation.com. Ready? Creation. Okay, well, it's not long and hard to remember. It's the easiest web address that you could think of if you're looking for information on creation. Another tool we have to get information out into the church is an email news. And what we try to do in our email news is we try to provide the Christian perspective on the latest scientific discoveries. Because the latest scientific discoveries, they're always written up, they're always packaged in this evolutionary framework. And what we do is we remove that evolutionary packaging and just present, for example, here's a good example of one that went out a few years ago. It involved the discovery of a hadrosaur dinosaur. There's an artist reconstruction of what that animal looks like. The picture behind it there, that's taken through a microscope. That's some soft and stretchy tissue that they were pulling out of its unfossilized bones. An evolutionist dated that animal to have died 80 million years ago. We thought that was interesting. Maybe you think that's interesting too. How can there still be soft tissue in the bones that was 80 million years old? But that's what we try to provide. And could you see emailing some of those to your kids and grandkids that may be struggling in this area, going through school, hearing about evolution, that kind of thing? If you want to sign up for that, it's a simple little thing that you can do to start getting this information into your home. There's some sign-up sheets that look like this. And if the ushers could pass those around, that'd be great. I'm not going to pause for that. You can circulate those among yourselves. Just write your name and email address on there, and I'll make sure you get on the list. It's a simple little thing that you can do to get information into your home. And you can pass those on, and we'll get going with our topic here this morning. Let me start with this. It's a great time to be a Christian. Do you agree? Okay. And some of you might be saying, are you nuts? Well, what do you mean it's a great time to be a Christian? We just heard about laws governing, can't pray in school anymore and that kind of thing. Laws are kind of going against Christianity, that kind of thing. And there's increasing persecution in Canada. It's not physical yet, but that's coming. Don't worry. It might not be long, but it is a great time to be a Christian because there's a massive amount of support for our faith. Support that our parents and grandparents never had. I mean, in a sense, it's always been a great time to be a Christian, but today's a particularly great time to be a Christian because our faith is so well supported. The more that scientists discover about how life works and how the universe works and how the earth works and how oceans and rocks and how all of this, they discover things about God's creation, it just wonderfully supports what the Bible says. It's a great time to be a Christian. I'll talk about some of that this morning. But obviously we're talking about the creation-evolution issue, so we need to define some terms there. The origins debate, creation-evolution, is often defined as it's a battle between science and religion. It's very popular. Many people have that in their thinking, even unwittingly perhaps. They think, well, evolution, that's about science, and they've got scientists, and they're doing science, and that's what it's all about. And if creation is discussed, creation's always put in the religion box. It's not scientific. It's just a faith. It's a belief. It's not scientific. Well, if we define our terms a little bit, what do you mean by science? What do you mean by religion? Well, if we were to try to cobble together a definition of science here this morning, there isn't one single definition of science that everybody would agree on. Some people say science is what scientists do. What are you doing? I'm doing science. There's one definition of science. But certainly everybody would agree that science has to do with things like making observations and repeatability. You can observe something happening, or in a lab you do an experiment and you can get the same results over and over and over again. Science involves those kinds of things, whereas faith is beliefs about things that cannot be observed. We have faith that God exists. The Bible says God is a spirit. We don't see God directly. We see what he's done throughout history, but we don't see him directly. We have faith that God exists. If we wanted a definition of faith, where might we go for a definition of faith? The Bible? Okay, where specifically in the Bible? Hebrews, yes, over here someone said it. Hebrews 11. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things, there it is, not seen. It's about things that we don't see. So there's a good biblical definition of faith. There's different kinds of faith, but there's a good biblical definition of faith. Now with those two sort of working definitions, science and faith, let's compare then the creation-evolution issue. Start with creation. Has anyone alive today observed God creating? No, right? It's not observed. None of you saw God create, I assume. You're not that old. Is it repeatable? Do we see God repeatedly creating the universe over and over again? Well, no, obviously not. Is it a belief about the past? Yes. Belief about the past. So creation then properly fits the definition of religion. If people come up to you at work or at school and they know you're a Christian and they say, well, you just believe creation by faith. That's just a religious idea. You could say, yes, it is. No argument there. It's not observable, it's not repeatable, it's a belief about things that we haven't seen. It fits the definition of a faith, a religion. Now what about evolution? Has anyone alive today observed, for example, ape-like creatures evolving into people over millions of years? No. Could you repeat such a process in a lab over millions of years? No, it's far too long. Is it a belief about the past? Yes. So evolution also fits the definition of a religion. It's not observable, it's not repeatable, it's a belief about things that happened millions of years ago when no humans were around to see it. It's just like creation, isn't it? And the Bible defines faith this way. Have you ever heard of the name Dwayne Gish? Has anybody heard that name? Okay, some of you have. He was a famous creationist. He died he died in March of 2013, a couple of years ago. He did debates on university campuses, over 300 debates in his lifetime. And even the atheists, they reluctantly admit that he pretty much won every debate. And he said this about evolution. Now, evolution is the substance of fossils hoped for, the evidence of links not seen. Gotta love Dwayne Gish, right? It's not observed. You don't see it happening. So what can we say about creation evolution? It's not science versus faith, science versus religion. They're both very, very similar. They're both beliefs about history. We, as Christians, have a belief about history. Comes from Scripture, right? Evolutionists have a belief about history. Comes from their imagination. If that might sound harsh, but look, that's the truth. They don't have a written record. They have nobody that was there millions of years ago. They made it up. And that might sound harsh, but I'm sorry, that's true. We have a written record. That's a tremendous advantage, by the way. But that's the first point we can make. They're both beliefs about the past. It's not science versus religion. If we zip through those two different beliefs very quickly, start with the evolutionary history. It starts with cosmic evolution. It's a Big Bang. You've all heard of that, of course. And the Big Bang goes something like this. First there was nothing, and then it exploded. I'm serious. The physicists that talk about the Big Bang today, they're saying there was absolutely nothing. No time, no matter, no space, nothing. And then through some quantum fluctuation, you have this huge amount of energy. And that energy then, a long while later, converts into matter. Hydrogen, they say, the very simplest of atoms. Maybe some helium as well. And so you've got hydrogen gas, and that's expanding, and space is expanding along with that. And then millions of years after that, some of that hydrogen gas coalesces to start forming solid objects, like dust, and then pebbles, and then asteroids, and then planets, and then stars. And then millions of years go by again, and about 4.6 billion years ago, our Earth begins to form from a spiraling, collapsing dust cloud. And you get a hot, molten Earth. That's geological evolution. And then millions of years go by again, and you get water starting to form, little warm ponds here and there, and then oceans eventually. And in a warm little pond millions of years ago, the first cell arose from lifeless chemicals. And that cell went on to evolve into ever higher creatures, into all the diversity of life we have on the planet today. That's biological evolution. That's what most people think of when you say evolution. This stage in that history. And the final step in that history, humans from an ape-like ancestor. That's one version of history. It's a very popular version of history. All of your kids and grandkids are learning it. There's another version of history. God creates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then at the end of that, there's a key event in history. God declares his initial creation very good. Initially, the creation was very good. If we line these things up, it might look something like that. Of course, the creation isn't very good today. We see we see a remnant of that very good beauty. We'll see a beautiful sunset, or some of the things we sang about here this morning. We see a remnant of that, but there's also things that are not very good. How did that happen? Again, history. It goes back to history. Adam sinned, and that created Apple computers. Or no. Got to be careful if there's Mac people here anywhere. But Adam sinned, and that brought death and bad things into the world. And so that came after God called his creation very good. And then history moves on. We have the flood of Noah in Genesis 12. We get up to Abraham, and eventually to the central teachings, the central events of all of history, the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. That's all of history hinges on that event. It's all about history. And so there's another history, very different than the evolutionary history. If we wanted to put dates on this history, like we just did for the evolutionary history, beginning 13.7 billion years ago, and the Earth about 4.6 billion years old, if we want to put some dates here, just very simply, ask any archaeologist, anybody who understands ancient history, when Abraham was born. And they'll tell you Abraham was born around 2000 BC. 1900 to 2100, somewhere around there. No one who understands ancient history or archaeology is going to suggest that Abraham was born 10,000 BC or 100,000 BC. Everybody knows Abraham was born around 2000 BC. Well, in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11, there are genealogies. And we should call those chronogenealogies because they have the chronology, the time between each of the individuals listed there. We have the exact year from the creation of Adam to the birth of Abraham. It's 2009 years. So if you want to get a ballpark figure going back to day 6 on creation, add on another 2009 years, gets you to around 4000 BC. And that's, if you've heard that, if this is the first time you've heard something like that, I remember the first time I heard that, I thought, that's crazy. But there's quite a number of things that all point to that ballpark, that range. Famous scientists have tried to figure out, when did this universe begin? Johann Kepler, that name should ring a bell, right? Famous scientist, he was the discoverer of the planetary laws of motion. He was trying to figure out, when did this universe begin? He came up with a creation date of 3992 BC, very close to 4000 BC. And he was obviously a Bible-believing scientist. And people say there are no scientists who believe the Bible and aren't evolutionists. Well, there were many of them, actually. The greatest scientist who ever lived. Who's the greatest scientist who ever lived? Einstein is usually the first answer, but... Einstein. Starts with N. Newton. Newton, still today, he's hailed as the greatest scientist who ever lived. Einstein's usually mentioned first, though, but he still has that title. Isaac Newton did a chronology. When did this creation begin? And he came up with a date, again, around 4000 BC. Here's another one. The Jewish calendar. You know that the Jews don't count their year like we do, like 2015, going back to the birth of Christ, right, for obvious reasons. Their year, it's an anniversary of the creation of Adam and Eve. That's what their year is based on. Does anybody know what year it is right now in the Jewish calendar? 5775. They've got a couple hundred years to go yet before they get to 6,000, but notice how close it is to that 6,000 years ago mark. Very interesting, thinking about that history. So what else can we say? So they're both very, very similar. They're both beliefs about history. It's not science versus religion. Well, we can say this. Both involve making observations and fitting them into history. This is how the science fits in. Now we're talking about observations. Observations in paleontology and geology and physics and so on. You make observations, and essentially, just to simplify that even more, the question you want to ask is, which history fits best? Here, I've made an observation, I'm a scientist, and I've made this new discovery about how the world works. Which history is the best explanation for what scientists are discovering today? Which history fits best? And I do a TV show, and little teaching videos there that are broadcast all over the world. I'm thinking of another series of teaching videos that we can make based on this question, which history fits best? And I'm kind of envisioning, you know those corny game shows from the 80s? and stuff, and you'll tune in. It'll be, welcome to another exciting episode of Which History Fits Best. And each episode will feature a scientific discovery. And then there'll be two contestants there, and the evolutionists will always lose and get angry and that kind of thing. So we'll have some fun with that. But we can play that game here this morning and look at a few scientific discoveries and ask which history is the best explanation for what they're seeing today. Well, actually, this one isn't recent. This one's quite a while ago. Here's the island of Madeira, about 600 kilometers off the coast of Africa there. There's some beetles on this island. They fly around, and it's windy a lot of the time. A lot of the beetles got blown off into the ocean, and they die. They drown. There was a mutation, a genetic mutation. Y'all know what that is? So that in all living things, we have DNA. That's an instruction code for how to build and operate a living thing. It's the software that runs the hardware, essentially. So there was a mutation, a copying mistake in the genetic code of these beetles that caused them to lose the ability to produce wings. Those beetles, the mutant beetles, then became the dominant population of beetle on the island. And that was true back in Charles Darwin's time, and it's still true today. And evolutionists, since the time of Darwin, have said, okay, which history fits best? It's the evolutionary history. This is evolution happening before our eyes. You Christians, how silly you are. Can't you see the evidence for evolution? It's happening right there on Madeira. Are they right? Here's a quick way of kind of telling the difference between the two different histories. The evolutionary history says we went from single cell to humans, or further back from hydrogen to humans, if you like. So it's onward, upward, constantly get more features and more functions. The Bible says everything started very good, and it's going downhill. What does Paul say in Romans 8 about the creation? It groans as though it's in the pains of childbirth. It's going downhill. What's happening to the beetles on Madeira? They used to have wings. Now they don't have wings anymore. Is this an example of natural selection? Yes. Is this an example of adaptation? Yes. The beetles have become adapted to this windy environment. Creationists wrote on natural selection long before Darwin. We thought of it first. Still an important part of the creation model today. It fits wonderfully with creation, with the Bible. It doesn't fit with evolution. The types of changes that scientists see in living things are not the types of changes that are ever going to evolve a single cell into humans. They're taking things in the wrong direction. If we think of mutations in humans, let me make it a bit more personal. Every new generation starts life off with about 100 new mutations. We all start life off as a single cell inside mom, 100 mutations per person per generation. They're accumulating every new generation. This is what that would look like. If that's Adam and Eve there, or your great-great-great-great-grandparents, all of the next generation would have approximately, on average, 100 more mutations when they start life off than their parents had. And the next generation would start life off with about 200 more mutations. And the next generation, just do the math, and on it goes from there. So here's a scientific discovery, and this is cutting-edge science from the field of genetics. The first one on Madeira, that was a long time ago. This is happening right, and this is just a very recent discovery, this incredibly high accumulation every new generation. Which history fits best? Here's a scientific discovery. Which history fits best? It's the history that says that humans have not been evolving for millions of years. If we were, we'd already be extinct. The instruction code in humans is deteriorating far too quickly. You can graph this out here. This is fitness. These red pluses that form this sloping line is a measure of fitness. Fitness is basically our ability to live and survive and carry on the human population. 100% fitness up here, 0% down here. When you get to 0, you have extinction. And actually, it never goes smoothly to 0. You'd get close to 0, and then you'd just have catastrophic collapse. Humans would be so sickly that you'd just die off. The challenge for evolutionists would be try to change the data here to try to get fitness to remain at 100% for millions and millions of years. You know what? It cannot be done. Not with any realistic data. Here's a new scientific discovery that powerfully supports the Bible. It's a great time to be a Christian. Wonderful stuff. And we could think of some other things as well. Let's look at telescopes this time instead of microscopes. Here's Io. This is one of Jupiter's moons. There's Jupiter in the background there. Io is about twice the size of our moon. And in the late 80s, a spacecraft flew around Io and mapped the entire surface of Io. And to the astronomers' great astonishment, they discovered 80 active volcanoes on Io. Why were they astonished? They were astonished because Io is supposed to be 4.6 billion years old. So it should be old, cold, and dead. Old, cold, and dead. But it's not old, cold, and dead. It's very active. It's very youthful. 80 active volcanoes. It's incredibly active. Which history fits best? It's the history that says that Io isn't 4.6 billion years old. We could play this game all day and keep going. That's why I love being a Christian. There's so much evidence that supports what the Bible says. We don't need to twist and manipulate Scripture to try to get in scientific discoveries. The scientific discoveries just wonderfully support what the Bible says. But that's the good news. There's this battle going on, isn't there? There's different voices out there. Because you don't see a lot of this stuff in textbooks, and our kids and grandkids aren't learning. We didn't learn this when we went to school, that kind of thing. The Bible kind of talks about this a little bit. It talks about a straight and narrow path that leads to truth and life. And it talks about a broad road that unfortunately the majority of people are on that doesn't lead to truth and life. And where this kind of back and forth, where this struggle shows up is in surveys that have been done and Christian children leaving the church. The number of people leaving the church, some of the numbers here are staggering. George Barna did a survey a number of years ago. 61% is what he found. Barna Research Group down in the States there. Well over half of young people when they get into their 20s, they've gone through junior high and high school and college and university and so on, and they leave the church. These are kids that grow up in Christian homes, that go to Sunday school and that kind of thing. Assemblies of God, this denomination in the U.S., they did a study, 66% is what they found. Lifeway Research, another research group in the States, 70%. They found that a percentage return as well. I mean, that's good news. The largest denomination in the U.S. is the Southern Baptist Church, Southern Baptist Convention. They did a survey back in 2002, 88% is what they found. Unbelievable. I was speaking a couple of years ago at a church in Charlottetown, PEI. It was a PAOC church, Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. These are American surveys. And after the service, the pastor told me that they had recently done a survey in the PAOC across Canada. You know what they found? 90%. I was actually shocked at that. I had thought that Canadian numbers would be better than our American counterparts for a number of reasons, but it turns out that we're actually a little worse in the PAOC. That's a fairly large denomination here in Canada. What's going on? I mean, we could sort of question these results if only one or two surveys give these astronomically high numbers and all the other surveys return results of 3% or 5% or 8% or something. But that's not what we're seeing. Survey after survey gives these incredibly high numbers. If we can't figure out as a church what's the cause of these things and how to fix them, we're in big trouble. Said another way, we're so bad at evangelism today that we can't even evangelize our own kids. Something's really wrong. What's wrong? What's the cause of this? I'd like to suggest that a major cause is the creation evolution issue. It's this issue. And I don't think it's the only cause. If people want to leave the church, they can make up all kinds of excuses, right? Church hurt me when I was younger, and the church is full of hypocrites and things like that. Sometimes I feel like saying, well, come on in, there's room for one more type of thing. But let me try and illustrate how I think this works, why this is such a major, like the creation issue is the result of, is showing up in these survey results. If we imagine a young person here, maybe one of the kids that ran off to Sunday school and so on, if we could look inside their heads at that point in their lives and see where they're at spiritually, we might see something like this. They love Jesus, and that's all they know. And every answer in Sunday school is either God or Jesus, right? And they're both right. And then they're watching these kid shows on TV like Dora the Explorer or Diego or something. You familiar with those? Yeah, some of you are. You're smiling. If you have kids or grandkids, you know that. My girls have all gone through their Dora phase, and they're getting out of it now. I'm kind of thankful for that. I mean, Dora teaches them Spanish, right? I wish she'd teach them Greek or Hebrew or something. I'd be a little more interested in that, right? Learn the biblical languages. But anyway, they're watching their TV show, and Mom and Dad, do dinosaurs fit with the Bible? I just learned on my kids' cartoon show that dinosaurs died millions of years before humans ever evolved, so how do dinosaurs fit with the Bible? And generally, mom and dad and grandma and grandpa don't know. And then, well, there was an ice age, wasn't there? There's good evidence for an ice age. Where does that fit into the Bible, mom and dad? And again, mom and dad, I don't know. And okay, well, maybe the Bible doesn't talk about an ice age directly, but it does talk about a global flood. It's very prominent. There are 3 whole chapters in Genesis. Okay, where did the water come from for the flood? And where did it go after the flood went away? And again, no answer. And as the weeks and months go on, the questions keep flooding in, and now they're not so little anymore. Now they're in junior high and high school and college and university, and the inside of their head looks something like this. It's a mess. And the message of the cross is very difficult to see, and we lose them. I think this is a major cause of those survey results. See, what happens is these questions remain unanswered, and they begin to feel over time that these questions are unanswerable, that there just aren't any answers for those questions, and therefore the Bible must be wrong. And at that point, essentially where they're getting to is, it's kind of like, Mom and Dad, I'm going to go with my professors. They have answers. They're smart. They know how the world works. The Bible doesn't have answers. And we lose them. I think that's a cause of this mass exodus of primarily young people, not only young people, but primarily young people from the church. Now that's kind of depressing on a nice spring morning here in Saskatoon. So let's move on quickly from there. And how about this? What would get youth to continue attending church, right? What's the solution? What do we do? If that's the problem, what's the solution? You ever heard of Josh McDowell? Does that name ring a bell? A number of you? Okay. He was an atheist. He went to college, and the way he tells his story, apparently there was a Christian group on campus trying to get him to come to a Bible study, and he was going to do these Christians a favor and disprove Christianity for them so that they could get on with their lives, right? That was his goal. And so he took it upon himself to attempt to disprove the resurrection of Christ. Big mistake. You can't disprove the resurrection of Christ, not if you're honest with the data. And in the process of his research, he became a Christian. And he's been involved in youth and campus ministry for decades, actually. He was speaking at my brother-in-law's church a couple of years ago in Illinois. He said this. I thought it was fascinating. 63%, he's talking about youth, 63% of young people said they would attend church if the church presented truth in a way that they understood it, and it was significant and meaningful to their lives. That kind of gives us a track to run on, doesn't it? There's a lot of young people out there saying, present truth to me, show me that the Bible is true in a way that's going to deal with, in a way that's significant and meaningful to what I'm dealing with. I'm hearing about all these attacks on the Bible, and no, we didn't come from Adam and Eve, we came from ape men, and all these different things. There never was a global flood, Bible's not true. Show me that the Bible's true in a way that deals with all of the attacks that I'm hearing from my professors, from other atheistic students or whatever, and I'll stick around if you can do that. Kind of gives us a track to run on, doesn't it? But it's an exciting time to be a Christian because there is so much support that we can communicate to the next generation to do exactly what kids today are asking for, or students, older kids, right? That kind of thing. So what else can we say about creation evolution? Well, both histories are considered sacred and are untouchable regardless of the facts. People think, well, it's facts. If you show me facts and show me a fact that the Bible's true, and I'll be a Christian. And that's nice to think about that, but that's not really the way it works. All facts need to be interpreted. Even something as simple as if we go outside and pick up a rock and say, this is a rock. Even in making that statement, you're making all kinds of interpretations first. You're saying, well, the light that's hitting it, that's bouncing into my eyes, and my brain is interpreting this in a particular way, and you've got all kinds of assumptions there, and what I'm feeling with my fingertips and so on. And the memory of other people have called those things over there rocks, and this thing looks like those things, so I'm going to say this is a rock based on my memory and what my eyes are seeing. You're making all kinds of interpretations, even with a statement as simple as, this is a rock. So I'll give you an example of how this works. See, as a Bible-believing Christian, my history is considered sacred, and it doesn't matter to some extent. It doesn't matter what people present to me. I'm not going to give up the Bible. For example, if somebody were to come up to me and say, these rock formations that you see here in Utah, in Monument Valley, where they used to film the cowboy movies years ago, these formations prove that there never was a global flood. Because if there was a global flood, obviously it's going to affect the surface features of the earth. It has to. Even small floods do that. But if somebody were to come up to me and say that, what's my response as a Bible-believing Christian going to be? My response is going to be, no, they don't. You've misinterpreted the facts. See what I've done? I've gone with my history, and I'm going to say that somewhere your research has gone off the rails. If that's the conclusion you're getting by studying these rock formations, I know that your research has gone off the rails. I might not know where. I'm not a geologist. But see what I've done? My history is considered sacred, and it's not about the facts. And you might say, oh, how narrow-minded of you. Yes. As Christians, we don't want to be closed-minded, but we do want to be narrow-minded. We want to be people of the book. We focus on truth. Right? And error, we keep that out. We're not interested in that. We focus on the truth. What does Paul say in Romans 12? We're to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. We're to think differently as Christians. We focus on truth. Now, in case you think that's being narrow-minded and the evolutionists and atheists, well, they're the open-minded folks, let's turn the card around and let's give another example. Here's some facts. This is a blood vessel over here, and on higher magnification, there's some blood cells inside the blood vessel. You might say, okay, well, I don't get it. What's the big deal? What makes those a little more interesting is those are structures from the inside of an unfossilized dinosaur bone, dinosaur leg bone, the femur of a T-Rex. So when evolutionists see facts like this, and there's been now over 30 instances of soft tissue found in dinosaurs. Talked about that hadrosaur when we got started here this morning. When evolutionists are presented with facts like this, what's their history about dinosaurs? Their history with dinosaurs says they all died about 65 million years ago. Obviously, these didn't. But when they're presented with things like this, what's their response? Do they give up their history and go with the facts? No. You know what they're saying about this stuff? They're saying, well, maybe biological structures in soft and stretchy tissue like this can last for millions of years. That's what they're saying. Boggles the mind, but see what they've done? They've gone with their history and they ignore the facts, or they try to reinterpret the facts. Very interesting thinking about some of these things. Now, we started off talking about creation and evolution, sort of, they're two religious ideas. They're two beliefs about the past, aren't they? You wouldn't combine another religion with Christianity, would you? You wouldn't combine Islam with Christianity, Buddhism with Christianity. Why would you combine evolution with Christianity? And yet that's a growing trend today among academics. And, oh yeah, just believe in both. There's no conflict, just add evolution to the Bible. Okay, well let's have a look at what that does to the central teachings of Christianity, the gospel, right? What's the central message of Christianity? Christ dies to pay for sin, right? That's what it's all about, right? Jesus died in the place and in the stead of sinners so that when we die, we can stand before God sinless. Not because we haven't sinned, but because the price for our sin has been paid for by Christ. It's called substitutionary atonement, right? You've heard that before. He was our substitute. He paid the price that we ought to pay for our sins. Jesus died to pay for sins. Why did he have to die? I mean, could Jesus not have performed some ritual to absolve us all of our sins? No. Why did he have to die a physical death? Because physical death is the payment for sin. Hebrews 9:22, for example, says, without the shedding of blood, that's obviously physical death, without physical death, there's no forgiveness of sins. That's why Jesus had to die a physical death to pay for sins. And we just celebrated that 2 weeks ago. At Easter, Good Friday and Easter and so on, Jesus died to pay for sins. So that's the central message of Christianity. The thing is, death was first linked to sin back in Genesis. Initially, there was no sin, no death. Then Adam sinned, and God said, Adam, because you sinned, you will die. And so, of course, Adam died. And I'm sure you know the verses in the New Testament that link the first Adam and the last Adam, the work that Adam did and the work that Christ did and so on. Paul makes those allusions, and so do some of the other writers of the epistles. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive. As an example of that, I'm sure you know those verses. The gospel begins in Genesis with the bad news that in Adam we all die, and in Christ we can be made alive. That's the whole gospel. It starts in Genesis. So if we modify Genesis, we destroy the gospel. How? I'm talking about by trying to blend in evolution and millions of years into Genesis, it doesn't just end up destroying Genesis, it ends up destroying the central teachings of Christianity. The whole reason we're here this morning and celebrating Christ, what he did for us. Now, without getting really theological or technical, we can answer that question, how, by blending these two together, does it destroy the gospel, by asking another question. That might be a little bit simpler to answer. Here's the other question. Where do the fossils fit? Where do the fossils fit? Obviously, there is a fossil record. There's fossils all over the world. Where was the fossil record established in biblical history? Got a number of options there. So let's look at some details about what the fossil record is like, and then we'll try and fit that into biblical history at the appropriate place. Well, here's the fossil record. It's a record of death, obvious dead things there, pain, diseases, extinction, carnivorous activity, and it's interpreted to be millions of years old. Now, the millions of years is an interpretation, right? Again, nobody saw, it's not an observation. Nobody saw the fossil record laid down over millions of years. It's an interpretation. There are other interpretations. But just for the sake of argument, just to keep things simple, let's accept that the fossils really were deposited over millions of years. So what do we see in the fossil record? Diseases, for example. There's so many diseases that scientists have discovered that an entire term has been coined, paleopathology. It's the study of deadly diseases in the fossil record. Cancer is one of those diseases that's been found. Not just one instance, but many instances. Bone cancer, you can see it there in the fossils. What else? Pain. We see pain in the fossil record. Here's Sue, the T-Rex. This is one of the largest, most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex ever found, about 85 to 90% complete. She's on display there at the Chicago Field Museum. I took this picture a few years ago. You walk into the lobby and you're presented with this amazing animal. They're incredible. This massive T-Rex. Sue suffered from a badly healed broken leg, 3 broken ribs, one of which healed in 2 pieces. Guess they didn't have surgeons back then to set the bones properly, so ouch. That's an example of pain in the fossil record, right? She had fused tail vertebrae, likely to do some pretty severe arthritis. Maybe some of you have fused tail vertebrae, right? And you go get surgery done on that. You have pain medication. That's an example of pain in the fossil record. What else? Infections caused multiple holes in her skull. Researchers initially thought that it was punctures from attacks from other dinosaurs, poking holes in her head. Turns out it's worse. It's parasites boring holes in her head. Ouch. That's pain in the fossil record, right? The tooth of another dinosaur was embedded in one of her ribs, so she was attacked by other dinosaurs. And it's likely also true that Sue had gout. The gout alone would have caused excruciating pain. So Sue, this amazing animal here on display in Chicago, is an example of pain in the fossil record. What else do we see in the fossil record? Carnivorous activity. Here's a fish fossilized in the process of having its breakfast. It's eating another fish, right? With the carnivorous activity, animals eating other animals, very obvious in the fossil record all over the place. So there are some details about what the fossils are like. Now let's turn our attention to biblical history. So where do the fossils fit? And just to simplify things even more, let's just zero in on that point in history when God calls his creation very good. And again, that was, what, about the end of the Garden of Eden, about 6,000 years ago, something like that? If we put them together, or let's look at some details of the very good world. That terminology comes from the last verse of chapter 1. There it is there. God called his creation very good. So perfect God calls his completed creation perfect, in a sense. We get some details in the 2 verses before this one here. In verse 29, there's no death at that point. Adam and Eve are commanded to eat plants. Plants in the Bible don't really die because they're not really alive. Plants wither and fade. That kind of terminology is used there. But no meat eating, no McDonald's, no hamburgers, no barbecued. We had barbecued hamburgers last night. No bacon. It was a very good world. And amazingly, in the very next verse, the animals are given the same command, herbivores. No carnivorous activity in the very good world. You didn't need to worry about you or your kids being ripped up by wild animals, lions, tigers, velociraptors, and T-Rexes. It was a very good world. Those things didn't happen. And I'm sure most of you probably know the verses about animal behavior in the future, right? You know those verses, right? In the Psalms and so on, it says, the wolf will lie down with the lamb, and a lion will eat straw like an ox. Animal behavior, according to Scripture, is going to change in the future to revert what it was, back to what it was in the very good world in the past. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, so there are some details about the very good world. Now, if we put these two together, if the fossils really are millions of years old, then this is how we arrange them, right? So the fossils would have already been there about 6,000 years ago, about 4,000 BC, when God stepped back and said, my completed creation is very good. So God is saying, death is very good, pain is very good, cancer is very good. You see a problem with that? Yeah. When Jesus was here 2,000 years ago, he basically wiped out disease in Israel. Would have been a fascinating time to be an Israelite back then. And he didn't go around giving people diseases like it's very good. Hey, you don't have cancer. Yeah, there. Now you got cancer. It's very good. No, that didn't happen. And then what do you do with famous verses like this one? Here's a verse that you all know that link death and sin. The wages, the penalty, the price of sin is death. Well, no, not if death has been around long before there was ever sin. If there's death and bad things, or animals ripping each other up and all kinds of violence for millions of years before Adam sins, and then Adam sins, and there's death and violence and all kinds of things going up to today. So what did Adam's sin do? Nothing. That means Adam's sin is not connected to death. Back in Genesis, there's no connection between sin and death. So this verse is wrong. And so then when Jesus died, he really didn't die to pay for sins because death has nothing to do with sin. And that's how, by attempting to combine millions of years in evolution into Genesis, in a few simple steps, you destroy the central teachings of Christianity. Then Jesus didn't die to pay for sins because back where death and sin were first linked together, they're unlinked. There's no relationship between the two because death has been around for millions of years. But that's not true, is it? If we just go with Scripture and we want to arrange these things in a way that makes sense biblically, we have to get the fossil record somehow after God called his creation very good, and more specifically after that point in history where Adam sins and death enters the world, right? Now, if we just go with Scripture and we shuffle these things around, that's the way we need to arrange them. Right? Initially, God calls his creation very good. Then at this point, Adam sins. At this point, death and bad things enter God's very good world, and the fossil record records death and bad things. Easy, right? However, now we run right up against another equally interesting predicament, and that is, according to the Bible, fossils must be relatively young. So now, in order to preserve the central doctrines of Christianity, we've got to turf the millions of years. That's a challenge. That is a challenge for many people because we hear millions of years all the time. Evolution says the fossils must be millions of years old. That's their story. Bible says they can't be, otherwise you got massive theological problems. What does science say? Evolution says one thing, Bible says another thing. Do we have any scientific evidence, any fossils that we know did not take millions of years to form? Because that's what we're told. That takes millions of years, slow and gradual deposition, slowly turning bone to stone, that kind of thing. Do we have any science to suggest that that's not what's going on? Yes, we do. We got boatloads of fossils that scream that type of thing. Here's a couple interesting ones, fossil octopus and a fossil jellyfish. If we go with the slow and gradual burial, we wouldn't have fossil octopus and fossil jellyfish. Those animals hardly have any hard parts. They're just soft tissue. They would have rotted if they wouldn't have been buried quickly. They must have been buried quickly. What's interesting is we see fossils like this showing evidence of rapid burial before the tissue even decays. They were buried rapidly all around the world. We see examples of that. Can you folks think of something global in extent that might rapidly bury plants and animals after sin and death came into the world? The flood, absolutely. About 1,600 years after creation, we have Noah's flood. Huge amounts of erosion and deposition, ideal conditions for fossilization. Folks, that's where the fossils fit. There's such a beautiful cause and effect relationship between the flood and the fossils. You've heard of cause and effect, right? Well, what's the effect? The effect is we see a worldwide fossil record showing evidence of rapidly buried plants and animals all over the world. Beautiful preservation in many cases. What's the cause of that? A worldwide flood, rapidly burying plants and animals. I love being a Christian. It makes so much sense. right? And the sequence is right. We have the fossil record of death and all kinds of bad things established after bad things came into existence. Perfect. What more could you ask for? It's great. And yet again, what that means is the flood is responsible for the fossil record, not millions of years. And this is where there's a lot of Christians struggle with the millions of years. They say, oh yeah, God created, but he did it over millions of years. The millions of years is a really controversial issue. And if this is something that you're struggling with, you know what? The flood is the key to understanding the age of the earth. It really is. Because a flood would dramatically accelerate many of the geological processes that we often think of take millions of years. Sedimentation, erosion, continental drift, mountain building, all those things would be dramatically accelerated by a global flood. Creationists believe there was one continent originally, broke up rapidly during the flood. It's the key to understanding the age of the earth. But then people say, well, how could a flood do that? This is Grand Canyon, there's the Colorado River. I mean, didn't the river carve the canyon? I mean, that's what we're told. You go to the Grand Canyon National Park and all the signs will say that the river carved the canyon over about 1 million years. That's the explanation. How is a flood involved in doing that? And people struggle with that. Well, let's look at some other canyons and see if we can't make some analogies here. Here's another canyon about 600 feet across, 150 feet deep, and a little river running down the middle of the canyon. Now, if we would go to that canyon today, we might suppose that the river carved the canyon. And that is a reasonable hypothesis. There's nothing wrong with that. Rivers do erode rock, and given long enough, I suppose it could carve that canyon. But in this case, it's wrong. The river did not carve the canyon. This is a picture from the base of Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is a volcano. What happened was the volcano erupted. There was ice and snow up on top of the mountain. That melted very quickly, and that produced a mud flow that came through this area, twice highway speed, carving out that canyon. Or maybe highway speed, depending on how fast you folks drive around here. But in any case, it was a rapid event. And the thing is, the river wasn't even there before the canyon was there. So it's not the river caused the canyon, it's the canyon caused the river. But you wouldn't necessarily get that if you didn't start with the right history. If you go vacationing in southern Washington State today, if you don't start your thinking with the right history, you'll probably never get the right conclusion about this canyon and the relationship of the river to the canyon and so on. If you look at that illustrates the importance of starting our thinking with the right history. Start with biblical history. Or the history at the base of Mount St. Helens in this case. Here's the sidewall of one of those, of that canyon there. What's interesting is this layer in the middle here, about 15 feet thick. There's a person down there for scale, about 15 feet thick there. That was laid down in 3 hours on June 12th, 1980. Again, as a result of an eruption of the volcano. What blew geologists' minds is when they had a close-up view of that layer. There's a close-up view. Look at that fine layering. Just millimeters thick, some of those layers. Geologists are used to thinking of those layers as maybe one or a pair of them being laid down per year, like 2 layers a year. And yet here's dozens of layers in just a few inches in a sequence that was deposited in 3 hours. It's incredible, some of the things that happen around Mount St. Helens. And yet Mount St. Helens was only a few mud flows on the top of a mountain. It did some pretty cool stuff. But if we go back to Grand Canyon, we've got to ask ourselves, did the river carve the canyon over 1 million years? You get the same situation as St. Helens. If you don't start your thinking with the right history, chances are you won't get the right conclusion about how the canyon got there. I had the opportunity in the mid-90s to go whitewater rafting down the Colorado River through Grand Canyon for 5 days, sleeping out beside the river underneath the stars at night. Some of the biggest whitewater in the world. They're whitewater rafting down the Colorado. They call that extreme sports. I've done some other extreme sports. I've jumped out of a perfectly good airplane 8 times and had almost 300 flights on my hang glider, 299 flights. I never had that 300th flight, but I don't do such stuff anymore. I'm a good little boy now, and I'm married and that kind of thing. So, but I was going down the river with creation geologists and paleontologists, PhD scientists, and we were studying the evidence in the canyon for rapid deposition of all those layers and rapid erosion of the canyon in a flood, post-flood type scenario. And guess what? The more we study Grand Canyon, the more we're coming away with the notion that that thing could never have formed via those slow and gradual millions of years processes that all the park rangers at the park will tell you about. There's too much evidence there for catastrophic processes, exactly the kinds of things that we would expect going on in a global flood. Even did a DVD featuring a lot of the photographs I took and the teaching we got, the things we saw there in the canyon supporting catastrophism and that lining up with the Bible. Man, biblical history is supported by natural selection, like on the island of Madeira. You see that there? Fits beautifully with the Bible. Young planets, we talked about Io, and lots of other young structures in our solar system and beyond. Fresh, unfossilized dinosaur bones containing soft tissue, including proteins and all kinds of blood vessels, blood cells. And Dr. Schweitzer, the main paleontologist there, she said you could squeeze the contents out of the blood vessel. Incredible. Just amazing. Note, dinosaur bones, not dinosaur fossils. What scientists are finding are dinosaur bones. They're not even fossilized. Can bone last for 65 million years? No. It too is a biological structure, but that's what they're finding. Fits with biblical history. Genetics, mutations. We talked about the beetles on Madeira and mutations in humans. Powerful evidence that screams against evolution, but wonderfully supports what we read in the scriptures. Rapid canyon formation, even fine layers deposited quickly, and many more. We could talk about this for millions of years, but it's a great time to be a Christian. It really is. There is a massive amount of support for our faith. Now, I don't want to, sugarcoat this too much. It is a great time to be a Christian, but there's those nasty survey results that we really need to we need to get busy and fix some of those things. Let's use some of this information to equip the next generation. My number one recommendation, I brought some goodies with me that we can have a look at here afterwards. My number one recommendation of all of those things is Creation Magazine. It's a wonderful family magazine. We try to take a lot of the scientific terms out of there, so you don't need to be a PhD to understand it. We have another one that you do need to be a PhD almost, but this is not it. This is a family magazine. Short articles, color pictures, it's very pretty and so on. And it's quarterly, 4 times, not 12. We're all busy, right? You get 3 months between each one to read it and then pass it on to your kids or grandkids or leave it when you go get your teeth fixed next time. Leave it in the waiting room where the other magazines are. Just leave it there. People pick it up and they take it home. And I kind of picture the magazine working this way. Remember we started with this? You sign up for the magazine, and maybe some of you can relate to this. You have questions, and, well, can I trust the Bible? Really? Sign up for the magazine. Here's how it works. Along comes the first issue, and, oh, there's an answer to that question. Wow, never thought there would be. And the next one comes along and, oh, there's an answer to that one too? And the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And after a little while, the inside of your head starts looking more like this again. And you say to yourself, hey, I love Jesus. And every answer in church becomes either God or Jesus again, right? And I mean, not to be overly simplistic, but that's where we all want to be. If there's questions about Christianity, and Genesis in particular, that are gnawing away at your faith, do your faith a little favor, get a little boost for your faith. The magazine is a great way to do that. And if that sounds interesting, there are some sign-up sheets that are we'll start those around shortly. The way this works is it's kind of like Netflix. Netflix, you pay your $9 a month and the movies keep coming. And this is like that. You're not locked into any fixed term. We'll set up a payment either from a credit card or a bank account, and it keeps going for as long as you want. You can cancel any time. There's no fixed term. Now, it's $7.50 every 3 months, and what you'll get is you'll get a hard copy, the actual physical copy of the magazine, plus a digital copy to your email address. And you can share that on up to 5 devices. Your smartphone, your laptop, your desktop, that kind of thing. And I'll give you a free back issue for signing up today. Can you sign up at creation.com? Of course, but you don't get the free stuff. So if you sign up today, you get a free back issue. So the sign-up sheets look like this. We're already passing those around. Just tear off the lowest one and fill in the front and the back, your address information, and flip it over, and there's payment information on the back, and just hand it to me over there. There's no payment today. We'll get that set up, and I'll give you your free back issue, and you're off to lunch. What can you expect in the magazine? In case you're wondering, I'll give you a sample. Here's a cover from a few years ago. See those babies down there at the bottom? They're twins. One's white and one's black. One of the questions that Christians have is, if we all go back to Noah after the flood, and originally, of course, Adam and Eve, how do Christians explain the differences in skin shade? It's a good question, right? And we had here's something that we put in the magazine. There's a middle brown couple, had a black baby and a white baby. You got to know there's an answer to that question when things like this happen, right? There's the twins when they were 7. That was taken a couple years ago. I think they're about 9 or 10 now. And so that's my number one recommendation. Get the magazine, and that's the kind of information you get in it. There's also books back there. This is our most popular book, the Answers book. I'd really say, get the magazine, but if you're a book person, then this is the one you should get. Why? Because there's answers to more than 60 of the most asked questions in a single book. It covers a huge range. And there's all kinds of other books out there, Christianity for Skeptics, and that book we've bundled together. There's DVDs on Mount St. Helens, Evolution's Achilles' Heels. This is our latest book. It's our Evolution Master Blaster. If you're convinced that evolution is true and that it's scientifically sound, we worked on this project for a little over a year. The book is written by 9 PhD scientists and edited together by a 10th PhD scientist. It's scientists from cover to cover. It's our, like I said, Evolution Master Blaster. And there's all kinds of other stuff there. But don't forget the free stuff. Nearly 10,000 articles on that website. And you can watch our TV show. If you don't get Miracle Channel here in Canada, then watch it online. And we'll just tell you the kind of information that you would get in Creation Magazine. And so it really is a great time to be a Christian. There's so much out there that supports our faith. Let's pray. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, we thank you that today there really is so much that's out there. We thank you for science. We thank you for scientists and some of the amazing discoveries that have been made that just show your handiwork in your creation. And we thank you for that. We just pray that the folks here would get equipped with some of this information and just be a conduit to feed some of this information to their kids that may be borderline, maybe leaving the church or on their way out. And we just pray that many would be rescued. We pray more than that people would share this information with people who don't believe that your word is true. And as a result of those efforts, that many